when they brought their bodies home, I saw each family and said, I'm the guy that sent them. I just wanted you to know. And to me, if you're going to be in charge, that's the sort of thing you've got to do. I know one particular fella who said to his mates as he was being put on a helicopter, I'm going to go to the Paralympics. Invictus came about through a sense of getting veterans together from different countries and to say to them, you might be back in a tribe.
Born into an army family, Sir Peter Cosgrove had a long and successful career in the armed forces, retiring in 2005. He served as our Governor General of Australia for 5 years. He was knighted in the Order of Australia and also is the patron of Invictus Australia, which we'll be talking about today. Sir Peter Cosgrove, welcome to the NEC Creating Value series. Thanks for joining me.
I'm delighted to be with you.
Can I start by saying this is the first Sir that I've ever interviewed?
Well, probably not the last.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, it depends how this goes, isn't it?
Well, there's only a couple of us, myself and Angus Houston. So once you've done him, that's you've done 100%.
I've done everyone? Oh, I've got to find Angus and then be able to do that. I want to start talking about where we are and what's its significance.
Well, we're in the Hyde Park Memorial. There's the War Memorial for New South Wales, right here in the centre of the city. And here, the hub of this place was where veterans gathered in the aftermath of World War I. And this has been a place of refuge and perhaps consolation to a lot of veterans from that time. Many thousands of New South Wales men and women use this place as their guiding light in the aftermath of their service.
It's a beautiful building inside, architecturally as well. This is the first time I've ever been
Yeah.
inside. I'm very lucky to be sharing the experience with you.
Yeah.
We went for a little bit of a wander before, and you were telling me about some of the areas that are pretty specific to you.
Yeah, just not far from where we're filming, there's a room there which is reflective of where every place in New South Wales, whether it exists now or has gone by the board, but in World War I, those names mentioned on the wall are where New South Welshmen and women signed up to serve. Every place.
And one of the cool parts as well is on the ground, it has different parts of where people served, and there's actually soil from where it is.
That's unique, isn't it? They've got all these battles and places of conflict listed, and underneath a little glass pane there with the name nearby, that's where soil, as you pointed out, from the battlefield was placed in there. And in some places where it was at sea, a bit of the seawater from that place.
Really?
Yeah.
How do they stop the seawater from melting, or is it just in there?
Oh,
once?
we might have evaporated.
I think it
by now.
maybe now.
But it was placed in there before sealing.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Now that's where the people that served grew up. We'll talk about your incredible career and as being the new patron of the Invictus Australia and things like that. However, I want to talk to you about your journey as a youngster. So where did you grow up? And
I'm a local boy, Paddington,
Beautiful.
just up the road. You could walk there in 20 minutes.
And what were you like as a kid? Were you a good kid, naughty kid?
Oh, look, we were sort of like genteel urchins. We were in a working class suburb. But in those days, the solidarity within the suburb meant that you could be half a dozen streets away from your home. And an adult would come out and say, stop making that noise, you kids. And you'd all do as you're told. It was that sort of close-knit community. Most of the people in the suburb had some connection with World War II because of just the working class nature of it. Everybody signed up. So I was the son of a soldier.
How do you feel that that's pretty different these days? You know what I mean? Like communities these days, people come and go so fast, especially in inner city. That area, how does that make you feel that it's changed so much?
Oh, well, it's just life. I mean, my kids are so much different to the kids that I grew up with because we're now in the information age. Our horizons were governed by that, 20 or 30 streets in the suburb. So, these days, my kids had been overseas many times by the time I was in high school. As a kid, I hadn't been anywhere. So my kids had been overseas to the United States, the UK, India, all these sort of places with me as a part of the family. So kids are just exposed to different experiences.
What about yourself when it started changing and it became that information technology age as you talked about? Did you personally find it hard to adjust, or did you go with the times?
Oh, look, you've got to be cunning, and you surround yourself with smart people, smart younger people.
Mate, that's why I'm here next to you, because you're smart.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, interviews can prove I'm not. You get people who understand the technology, and one of the great learnings if you become a senior military officer is find people who know what they're doing, tell them what the mission is, trust them, and try to learn from what they're doing. and they'll come up with marvellous outcomes.
Yeah, I agree. Now, you said before that your family was involved in the armed forces and that was in your blood. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, my granddad was in World War One. He served on after the war, between the wars, and then he served again in World War Two. He was a middle-aged man by that stage. Fortunately for him, in the Pacific War, before the war broke out, he had a burst ulcer and he had to come home to Australia to be hospitalised. Otherwise, he might have died in a prisoner of war camp. My dad met Mum during World War II. Dad was in the army. They got married, had kids. I was born after the war. My dad was still in the army. My dad did 38 years of service and I did 40. So we were a military family.
Are you proud that you got 2 more years on him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be too. I like that.
I told him the day I was promoted to major, I'd come home and ask him to salute me because he was a captain. So he retired.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I like that a lot. So did you straight away know that's what you wanted to do, to get involved?
No. I thought I might be a journalist or a policeman or a lawyer or a teacher, and in the army. And they were all to do with people. So I obviously sort of thought maybe I'm going to be a people type person, and I ended up going to the army.
At what age did you decide that was it?
Oh, 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just young when you got to make that decision, isn't it?
Yeah, I went to Duntroon because Dad said, look, if you're going to join up, have a crack at being an officer, because in the end, you hope that the officers have got the brain power to make good decisions. So go there and see how you go. And I did 4 years of training, and gee, I must have nearly bombed out a number of times, but I made it.
Can I ask what that training was like, especially as a youngster? Is it brutal on the body mentally and physically?
Physically it was. I had photographs of me in that first month or so in the army, and I looked like, I looked terrible because I was exhausted, I was always in a bit of trouble, and unfit. But when I got fit, that level of toughness stays with you for the rest of the time because you've been through the mill.
Yeah, we even used to do that at my high school. Like we did cadets, and
yeah.
I had a lot of friends that actually stuck with it and did it. And I guess what are some of the life skills that you learn in that moment, especially as a youngster, that really helped you?
Well, taking responsibility. I mean, you are put in charge of yourself for a start. You've got to discipline yourself. You can't be wandering around. If you want to be a leader, you can't be wandering around, not being punctual, not being mentally organised, all those sorts of things. You've got to actually perform. So you learn that early, and you learn that probably under pressure, and that stays with you.
Now, you've been very humble saying that you joined the army, but you ended up running the army, the chief of the army, the head of the Defence Force. At what point did you realise that might actually be on the cards and something that you wanted to do?
Literally only months before I got the nod. I reckon I was washed up a few times. I didn't feel like I was washed up, but I looked at the competition, and these are brilliant men. And these days, if I was in the army now, men and women, and you'd look at them and you'd say, wow, they're pretty good. So you think, I can do the job, but the competition is fierce. So I reckoned when I was a brigadier in the 90s, I thought, well, I've probably maxed out here, but I found the secret. Do the job you're doing to the very best of your ability and enjoy it, and let the future take care of itself. I was lucky. I got to be in charge of the mission in East Timor in 99-2000, and that went pretty well. The men and women did magnificently, and you ride the back of their success a bit. You come home, everyone says, oh, he's the guy. So I got made up to be the chief of the army, and then I became the chief of the Defence Force. So luck was on my side.
I agree with you. Like, you're a product of the people that are around you and work with you.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Obviously, I'm very grateful to be Australian of the Year, but it's not because of me, it's because of everybody else, you know, people with disability that broke down the barriers before me and things like that. However, when you are thrust in a leadership position, it can be very different. How did you cope with that? Did you have any moments where you found it hard to create value? It's
not creating value, it's the taking responsibility. Because the creating value is just a job of harnessing the people you've got, making sure they've got some clear ideas of what you want them to do. And then it's a bit like the old instruction when you are setting off a firework: light blue touch paper and retire smartly and watch them go. Monitor them, support them, and they'll do it. The real thing is to take responsibility. So if you're going to put them in harm's way or get them to do something dreadfully difficult, take them away from their families, send them somewhere dangerous. Make sure you've thought of all the things that should have been done, and you've done them.
Did you have a moment where you did face extreme hardship in that role and that you found really tough?
Yeah, look, in 2005, there'd been a tsunami in the Indian Ocean, and it smashed Sumatra. So we had people up there, they'd worked hard, they'd done a good job, they were coming home, and a shipload of people were just in Singapore thinking they're going back to their families. They'd been away since Christmas, and blow me down, there's an earthquake occurred again in Sumatra. I sent them back up. And on day one of operations, a helicopter crashed and 9 people were killed outright and 2 were dreadfully injured. So that's all the people that were on that helicopter. And you sort of say to yourself, well, we can't go back on that. These people have passed away. So you start thinking, what could I have done? What should I have done? Eventually, it turned out that there were some maintenance problems with the aeroplane that they were on. But I went around when they brought their bodies home, and I saw each family and said, I'm the guy that sent them. I just wanted you to know. And to me, if you're going to be in charge, that's the sort of thing you've got to do. So, say to people, I sent them, they had to go, they were doing a worthwhile job, and how sad it is that they've been killed in the course of their duties. They are heroes for taking on the responsibility.
Thanks for your vulnerability, saying that. We appreciate that. How do you work with people to make sure they can cope with that? Because obviously that's going to be quite hard with their mental health. Even for yourself, you were serving on the front line, and I'm sure you lost friends and things like that. You know, someone who's obviously never been to war or anything like that, can you explain, I mean, what that feeling is like when you lose someone close that you work with?
Well, you internalise it to a great degree. You should also emote, but you've got to remain the leader. So when you are expressing your sense of loss, there's got to be with an eye on recovery of the team, because that team is bereaved. They probably feel very confused by the whole thing. You've got to get them back up. So you must be careful in the way you console them and get them ready for the next hard job. I saw something that another television program showed of the aftermath in Afghanistan of a group of soldiers who'd been out, and somebody got very badly hurt and they killed, and they were returned to their barrack building, and their officer went through an act of consolation and remembrance, and then he finished, and the sergeant major said, now let's get ready, we've got to go out there again where that occurred. We must be out there, and we have to have our game face on when we do that. And I thought, isn't that the yin and the yang of soldiering?
Yeah.
You suffer the loss, you get on with the job.
What about you personally as a leader? We have a lot of leaders who listen to this and watch this. Do you take time to look after yourself as well, to make sure that your mental health in a moment like that, so you can be the best that you can be?
You're subject to all of the normal doubts, but perhaps even elevated, because once you're senior, you're not going to be out there getting shot at. You're sending people to get shot at. So that's on your mind. Have I done enough? Did I make the right call? Did I advise the government correctly that we could do this? Have we done everything in our power to make it safe and to point towards success? And you worry about all that sort of thing. Probably my hardest time was when my own son was in Iraq, and there were things happening every day, and you think, I hope I don't get the phone call, because I'm overall the guy that sent him over. The government said I should.
And you're his dad.
Yeah, and of course, yeah. So he was disenchanted one time because they used a system when there'd been an explosion or something like that. They had a containable number of people, so they put them all on the mobile phone and said, you get 30 seconds each to ring your mum, your dad, your wife, and say, that you'll see something on the news, don't worry about me, I'm okay. And that way, when the news was on the next morning, the family would say, well, it's not our kid.
Wow, that's hard.
Well, I got the phone call. I got the phone call in the middle of the night from somebody in the headquarters to say there's been an explosion in Baghdad, but your son's all right.
Okay.
And anyway,
but hearing that phone call, your heart would have dropped.
Well, my phone rang later on. It was my son doing the 30-second job. He said, Dad, I said, I know. Yeah. He said, I said, I know. He said, well, I don't know why I bother telling you.
Yeah, I was going to say, the boss finds out first.
Yeah,
so
well, yeah.
That's fair enough. Now, for people that serve in the armed forces and come back with an injury or mental health struggle, whatever, how is it for them? How is it for them when they first get back?
Well, the first thing is they're never off your mind. They should never be off anybody's mind. They go away, this tragic thing happens, they come back. Some of them will be absolute champions. I know one particular fella who said to his mates as he was being put on a helicopter, I'm going to go to the Paralympics. I think we know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And those people, they're just so tough.
Curtis McGrath, if you talk about, he's a much better looking, more talented version of me.
Yeah, I got you.
I reckon, yeah.
But there are others who come back and they become silent, withdrawn. They sort of shrink back into themselves. They need our love and attention, and they need actual help and hope. And that's hugely important. They're never off our minds.
Do you reckon the Australian public understands that fully and give them the support that they always need?
No, but they can't.
Yeah.
It's a fast-moving society. It's like saying we should all be kind to each other all the time. Well, it's a fast-moving society. However, what we have to do is keep reminding people that in amongst all these people dashing around in modern life in Australia, there are these precious people who put their lives on the line and have become, if you like, in some way, incapacitated by the experience. And here I'm talking about servicemen and women, but I'm also talking about first responders, and I'm talking about people in the trauma area of hospitals, people under pressure all the time. And we must always say, well, they could succumb quite easily to thinking, nobody knows, nobody cares, my life's not worth much.
Yeah.
And we must prevent that.
I think you're exactly right, and there is that misconception, especially around disability, for people that get injured, that their life's over, right? And that's because what we're led to believe for society, something that I'm trying to change personally. And I talk to returned servicemen and women, they're like, what's the point of living? I go, well, you can still live and you can still get out there, but they need the support, don't they? And one thing that you and I are both passionate about that brought us here together as well is the Invictus Games. You're the patron of it in Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about, for people that don't know, what it is and why you wanted to get involved?
Well, Invictus came about overseas through a sense of getting veterans together from different countries and to say to them, through the agency of sport, we want to demonstrate to you veterans and to all the people who are onlookers, that this is exuberant, it's possible, you tough people can handle this, and it's going to demonstrate that there is things that a person who has suffered can aspire to. And it was wonderfully successful, and it came to Australia. And I can remember Prince Harry, as being one of the moving lights, was here to celebrate with the Invictus participants. I was Governor General at the time, and I went to some of the events. Oh, how good is this? One of the first things I saw was a wheelchair event in Botanic Gardens. That's where it started and finished. So I'm there as Governor General watching the race, and here comes a fellow coming first, and he's being pursued by, he's an Australian, he's being pursued by a man from another nation in a chair, and that fella, he must have had one of these winder things, and in some way that broke down, and the Aussie became aware that this fella who was challenging him for the lead was now unable to continue at that pace. The Aussie stops, goes round, gets him, pushes him ahead, and the other competitor thought, he's going to get me up to the line, and he'll finish first, I'll finish second. The Aussie gets him up the line, pushes him over to come first. And that was the spirit of Invictus. We're all in this together. I loved it.
I was there with you, and I couldn't get over how good the vibe was. You're right. Like, it was genuine. I remember I was watching the wheelchair tennis, and there was a match, I think they were from Canada, and a helicopter went over, and that gave one of the guys PTS, and he started getting a bit emotional and crying. Everybody stopped the match. I got goosebumps talking about it, and came over and supported him. I love this guy because then he went out and pumped them, beat them at tennis. And I was like, good man, you know what I mean? But like, it's special, wasn't it? There's something about the vibe that was there. How important do you think sport as that medium is to bring people back to a bit of normality?
Well, that moment has inspired what we've now seen created as Invictus Australia, which is to say that the whole ethos of getting yourself into a better place through the agency of sport in particular is going to be ongoing. So Invictus Australia offers to veterans often veterans with some level of uncertainty or disability, but sometimes just veterans who want to participate. Here it is. We will engage with you into sporting organisations where you may compete. You may compete if you've got a disability. You may compete if you want to be in some kind of able-bodied role. But the other part of it is that you might just be a facilitator of the sport. You might be a referee, or you might be a clubby. You might be back in a tribe of people who coalesce through the agency of sport.
Love that. It's so true. And that's what it is. It's finding your tribe. Your tribe might be different now because something's happened to you, but you can still find common place with people that you love and have shared common interests. If you were doing a sport, what sport would you do? If you played an Invictus sport?
Well, I'm still available for the Wallabies.
Oh, I hear that?
No, hang on. No,
get him in the Wallabies.
No, I'm still available.
What position
but
would you
I'm
play?
just not getting that call from the selectors.
Well, we can figure that out, right? I'm Australian of the Year, you were Governor General. Can we sort that out somehow, surely? I think that'd be good.
Look, I'm angry with them, so I'll leave them be.
Yeah, fair enough.
Don't phone them up.
Fair enough. So for people that come back from serving and they don't have something like the Invictus, you know, whatever it is, what supports are there for people that might be watching this that want to get more involved, to not only to as a returned serviceman and women, but also the public to be able to support as well?
Jump on the web. If there's one thing every modern Australian knows, it's if you want to find out where and how, jump on the web. Google Invictus Australia and follow the lead there. You'll love it.
I actually got to interview Prince Harry at your place. It was when you were Governor General, on your lawn. And he's genuine about this, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like, he cares to the core as someone who served that himself. And I think, you know, having his passion involved, I mean, how important is that to get that global lens and really bring some exposure to it?
Well, I think this whole notion of the cohesion of sport. You've played your wonderful tennis all over the world, and you number amongst those that you like, respect, and they reciprocate people from many nations on earth. That's available through the international Invictus community, but it starts here and continues here for every veteran who signs up. They will find themselves within a like-minded, loving community. And to me, it doesn't matter whether it's croquet or some other more vigorous and challenging sport.
Yeah, rugby, that's pretty loose.
Yeah, wheelchair rugby. I see where we had a win the other day.
Yeah, won the World Championships, which is cool. And it's cool that for some athletes in the Invictus Games, because obviously you have to be a returned service man or woman to compete. They're now progressing into the Paralympics. Like we talked about Curtis McGrath, obviously, but it's great because it's a great starting point to then progress through the ranks. I think what I also learnt the most about being at the Invictus Games is, which is one thing I love about it, it's not just for physical disabilities.
Yes.
It's also for people who with their PTS and their mental health. So
absolutely. Some person who might be sitting alone and anxious in a room can, instead of withdrawing into themselves or wondering whether it's all worthwhile, can find themselves with some kind of way of physically rehabilitating themselves in like-minded and sympathetic comrades. Yeah,
and I think also, like, it can be really tough for anyone struggling with their mental health, but especially if you've been through a big trauma. How do you go, you know, especially in your previous roles and that, communicating and supporting people that are struggling with their mental health when they return?
I always regard myself as a layperson here, but my instinct is that obviously mental health professionals must be involved in the treatment and rehabilitation of people. But I reckon you'd never find one of them who'd say, "Oh, don't do that Invictus stuff." I think they'd say quite the opposite. You should do whatever makes you feel better. Making you feel better in a healthy way is one of the, if you like, the motives of Invictus Australia.
I think also it's left such a great legacy, hasn't it, Invictus Australia? And I was jealous when I went to watch because the crowds were so big. Like, it was, it really shone an incredible light. We want to get it back in Australia. Can we organise that?
We can do that. You know what I thought was great too, and I'm going back to it was 2016, wasn't it? Afterwards?
Yeah, 2016, 2018. Yeah.
In 2018, what I loved out there at Homebush were all these school kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, schools from all over the place would, you know, you'd have busloads of teenagers in their school uniforms coming out to attend events, and of course they were seeing some hard-fought battles, but they were mingling with people who were rejoicing in the moment.
Yep.
And these were the competitors.
And they were seeing people with one leg, one arm, one eye, mental health struggles, you know, it normalised it, which I think was really cool. What about you personally? You've obviously left a legacy on this country, not only in your role with the Defence Forces, but as the Governor-General. Did you go out wanting to leave a legacy, or how do you define that in terms of what you've done?
Well, one of the things you have to do when you are invited to be Governor-General is you come from a particular sector of the community. I was from the Armed Forces. And the first and overriding thing you always say is, I'm Governor-General to 25 million Australians, not just the Defence Force. Mm-hmm. So you try to relate to every person in the nation. I may well be the first Governor-General to go to prisons and to see inmates. Mm-hmm. Not inmates who were in, if you like, the most difficult areas.
Yep.
But inmates who were not long away from coming out back to the wider community. And the message there was, hey, you've done your time. And we're hoping when you get out, life's going to work out for you. You're not a write-off.
When you made that decision to go into the prison,
yeah,
did you have to clear that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Palace, or how does that work?
Oh, no. No, we don't refer any. Look, the Governor-General writes his or her own script.
Yep. Yeah.
And there's some bounds of propriety. I mean, obviously would seek the permission of the custodial authorities to go there. I didn't just sort of bowl up and knock on the door.
But not everyone would use their platform for that. You know what I mean? So why did you make the
decision?
decision?
I just thought the inmates would. I wanted them to know that they still had a future.
Yeah.
You get out here. We hope that you can be returned into the community and stay out of trouble and become a productive member of the community.
If someone in a wheelchair wanted to be a Governor-General, I did notice there's an elevator.
Yeah.
There's an elevator in the building, which I did notice. Do you references, or?
I'll give you one.
Yeah. Is that on film?
Yeah.
We get that on film? Just making sure. No,
I'm writing it down.
Oh, right now. Yeah, very nice of you.
Yeah.
What did you find the most rewarding role that you've had? I know that's a hard one, and it's like choosing your kids, but you had some, very big responsibilities leading the whole country, the Defence Force. Where can you rank them? Where do you sit with it all?
I wouldn't ever try to rank them. There's memorable moments. I sort of discovered my Governor-Generalship in a way after the MH17 atrocity, the shooting down of the aeroplane over the Ukraine. The bodies were scattered all over the countryside. They were recovered by many people, but Australians were there to help recover the bodies. They came back through the Netherlands, and I came back home after I'd visited some of that part of the aftermath, and we had a memorial service in one of the cathedrals in Melbourne, and I had to think, okay, the soldier in me is really angry, and you want justice, and you know there's been this terrible atrocity, it's a mass murder, but what do the Australian people need? And I sort of discovered the Governor-Generalship there in the sense that I thought, they don't want some bloke banging on about justice, there will be recourse to justice. You never know about that. What they needed was consolation. Mm-hmm. They wanted to know that the bereaved wouldn't leave our memories, that we embrace them. So I thought, well, there you go. That's not a bad recipe for the rest of my Governor-General's time, to embrace the whole community.
It's good advice. I like that very much. Do you put the Governor-Generalship down as one of your greatest achievements, or is it...
No higher honour available to an Australian in his working life, or her working life, is to be asked to be Governor-General.
What was that knock on the shoulder like? when that
was pretty funny, actually.
Yeah.
Tony Abbott rang me up while I was in a limo with some chums on my way to a board meeting, because I was in corporate life then. And the phone rings and I look at my screen and it said Tony Abbott, and I realised it was not long after the election where he won office. And I thought, well, he's not ringing me up just to say hi. And I knew the Governor-General was retiring. So I thought, he's going, So I had this chum sitting in the car, and I thought, if I say g'day Prime Minister, cat's out of their bag. So I said, g'day. And he said, Pete. And he went through a bit of a spiel about he wanted me to be the Governor-General, and he invited me to accept the position. And I said, that's interesting. I'll get back to you. He must have thought I was an absolute flake. Anyway, I did get back to him.
Imagine walking into the meeting like the flex at the board meeting. You're like, I'm the boss now of the country. Not just you, but of everyone.
Well, in many ways, you might have some responsibilities, but the other thing to remember is, in a way, you're a servant of the people.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they have expectations that when you meet them, that you'll be interested in them, they can tell you their story, that you will reflect on that. If there's ways in which you can uplift them, you make sure you do that. We did 4,200 events in 5 and a bit years, and I gave a speech to just about every one. And you don't go and give a boilerplate speech which says, I think I'm in orange, I hope you're all right, you know, good on you, and I'm off. You have to do your homework.
Yeah.
You have to know what's happening.
Yeah, you do. Now, before we let you go, what's your final message around Invictus Australia, the importance of it, and for people watching about wanting to get involved?
I'd like every Australian who, when they hear Invictus Australia being mentioned, they understand that in the ranks of this growing group of men and women, there are people who want to return to one of the great joys of life. That is feeling pride and contentment within themselves, fulfilment, camaraderie, well-being. They want to establish their Australianness in this very important way as a coherent group which prizes physical activity and camaraderie. Australians should applaud it, and where they're invited to, support it.
Good way to end it. Sir Peter Cosgrove, thanks for joining me on the NEC Creating Value series and for being so open today, mate. I really appreciate it.
Good on you, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you.